Hello, hello. This is Taylor Ursula of That's So Pisces, and y'all, we are jumping face first into a Leo first quarter moon. So let's go. So we are jumping tracks, we are jumping timelines, we are facing a brave new unknown at this Leo first quarter moon, which takes place Wednesday, May the 15th at about 4:47 a.m. here on the West Coast at 25 degrees. Now, I say this because this is a first quarter moon ruled by the sun, right? The sun is ruling over Leo. The sun is currently in Taurus, being ruled by Venus, who is at home, also hanging out with Jupiter and Uranus. And speaking of Uranus, the sun has just made its conjunction to Uranus between the late night hours of Sunday into Monday morning, which we've just passed. So on Monday, we had the moon move into Leo and we had the sun make a conjunction to Uranus at 23 degrees. We also then had the moon make a swift opposition to newly retrograde Pluto in Aquarius at 2 degrees. So a lot of sudden change and possibly, probably some really intense gut reactions to this change, some threat to our sense of self and what we feel to be true, some challenge to what we hold emotionally and where power lies in the context of what we hold emotionally. Is someone outside of us holding the power? Is the ball in somebody else's court? Are we being challenged and confronted by ourselves or some part of ourselves that is feeling insecure in the wake of all of the sudden new changes we're stepping into with the sun making a conjunction to Uranus? Recall too that at last week's new moon in Taurus, we had the moon making a conjunction to Uranus. And I described that the sun would then follow up here on Monday and make this same conjunction. So something that we were perhaps emotionally ready for or opening up to in that new moon last week, now suddenly becoming real somehow, now suddenly being integrated into our sense of self and how we're going to start moving through the world. This was also the day that we had Venus in Taurus making a sextile to Saturn in Pisces at 17 degrees. And so with Venus overseeing this Sun-Uranus conjunction, as well as anticipating a conjunction to Uranus later this week, there has been some sense of permanence in what's been suddenly or radically opened up. We've also described this as maybe being something that's been brewing for some time in the background, that we're finally ready to bring out into the open. We're finally ready to own or live and breathe in some way. So it may not have been truly sudden. Maybe it was sudden for some and kind of knowingly lurking in the background for others, right? We're all embracing this in different ways from different perspectives. But there is certainly something lasting with that sextile to Saturn. We are finding perhaps support for the changes. We are able to see the long-term impact of these changes. And perhaps we are getting clear on what resources have been available to support these changes over time. Early morning on Tuesday, the moon making a trine to the north node in Aries at 14 degrees. This is also a north node that is anticipating a conjunction with its ruler Mars over the next week or so. And I think we talked about that happening on the very final day of Taurus season, which is this coming weekend. So there is also something growing in that imminent conjunction that's being connected to and sort of spread out around our charts through that trine to that Leo moon. The moon then makes a square to Venus in Taurus at 19 degrees. And so this is a less tense square. This is much more about what we are finding to be true about ourselves, right? Especially coming out of that trine to the north node and maybe recognizing where we are honoring ourselves and what we know to be true in a sense that is supporting where we are growing in that Aries part of our chart. And so this square to Venus, again, being at home in Taurus, is perhaps showing us where there is a bigger sense of opportunity here, where there is a bigger sense of support from others, maybe where we are able to feel a sense of excitement or even maybe nostalgia about giving ourselves something, being self-resourced, taking care of ourselves in a way that maybe is not frequent for us and maybe is instilling within us some sense of security in what we are experiencing, even as things are changing around us. The moon makes a trine to Chiron in Aries at 21 degrees. And we know that at the Taurus new moon last week, we had Mercury making its third and final conjunction to this asteroid as well. So we've been having themes coming up of where we've been inauthentic in the past because we have been wounded in our ability to initiate what feels authentic. We are perhaps bringing a sense of closure with the moon making this trine after this Chiron has been contacted so many times by Mercury. We are maybe getting a sense of, again, where we're standing up for ourselves, where we are standing up for our sense of truth, and what that's able to provide to that sense of wounding at this time. Early Wednesday morning, we have the moon in Leo make a square to Uranus in Taurus at 23 degrees, just before it then enters into the square to the sun in Taurus at 25 degrees. So there is some sense of a further unfolding in what this truth may represent to us, what other radical pieces need to start to fall into place around what's been opened up. There may continue to be emotional challenges in this process, in laying this all out on the table, in accepting the changes we're being faced or confronted with, in being able to make sense of them, in being able to reconcile who we know ourselves to be in the wake of these changes and how we will create space for all of this. And this is ramped up when the moon then makes a square to the sun, right? This first quarter moon, which will lead us to the Sagittarius full moon at 2 degrees next week. What stories are we supporting at this time? What stories are we releasing at this time, right? What meaning are we able to make out of all of this? And we'll get a chance to see that when we pull some cards in just a moment. But before we do, there's still a little more to unpack here. The moon then makes a square to Jupiter in Taurus at 27 degrees. This is Jupiter making its way out of the sign of Taurus soon. It is wrapping up these last weeks here. Jupiter will be moving into Gemini during Gemini season. So we'll see that happening once other planets have shifted into Gemini as well. And so we are wrapping up this time here. This may be a time where we are getting excited about what Jupiter's opened up in this part of our charts, about what Jupiter and Uranus have set into motion through their conjunction at this point several weeks ago. We might be getting a sense of what's possible from here as we start to zoom out and wrap up this current Jupiter tour. This first quarter moon is taking place on Mercury Day, and this is the same day that Mercury makes its way into Taurus. And so we are now at this point clear of the Mercury retrograde shadow. We have wrapped up those narratives. Hopefully we've gotten some really good information about what Mercury plans to do next or is interested in next, or what topics Mercury will be focusing on. And as Mercury is shifting into Taurus, we feel a bit of slowing down, not in the sense that we did in retrograde, which was stressful because it was a retrograde slow period in a fire sign that is initiative. And so we felt a certain frustration perhaps in that retrograde. This is a slowing down that's more grounding, that's much more patient. We'll be able to root into what interests and plans Mercury is interested in fleshing out at this time. And that might be some tempering to this first quarter moon as well, giving ourselves the opportunity to get into our bodies in this moment and get a sense of what we need from that place of embodiment. This is significant as well because later on this same day, the moon will move into Virgo and will be ruled by Mercury, who has just moved into Taurus, and they will make a trine at 0 degrees. And so whatever is surfacing, especially in this moon square to Uranus, for example, whatever becomes possible or whatever possibilities surface as the moon squares Jupiter, the moon then enters into Virgo, gets practical, gets into a detail-oriented focus, and Mercury is able to right away start to implement some of what that moon is feeling, and Mercury might be able to address or categorize or ground some of those feelings for us in a way that helps us start to make a plan. Okay, let's go ahead and pull some cards and see what meaning we are making of this process, how we are seeing things start to unfold, and what comes next. So stay tuned. Okay, so here we have our pull from our Taurus new moon. We had the High Priestess reversed on the bottom of the deck. If you missed this story, pause here. Pop on over back to this video. Do a quick recap for yourself and meet us back here, and we will pull for this Leo first quarter moon. Okay, here we go. So, a quick reminder that if you'd like to pull along, head over to priestessbaby.com/store. You will find my free Moon Phase Tarot PDF. You can pull along with us. Okay, so for today's prompts, we are looking at energy that is accumulating now, as well as doubts and complications that arise with this energy. We are looking at gifts that we can access through this energy. And we're getting a sense of lessons that we can make sense of as we approach the full moon. And we will look at the bottom of the deck to see what lies beneath these stories here. Okay. Oh, well, all right. The moon has popped out here for us today. We'll see if that returns, but there's certainly something about going deep within kind of our unconscious spaces, which can be a fearful process. We might fear what we'll see in there, which is why we tend to avoid it. All right, so interesting little note for us there. Okay. Okay. All right, I wondered. I was kind of noticing the Seven of Swords as I was shuffling. Okay, so I love this as a maybe counterpoint to our High Priestess reverse last week. And when we saw the High Priestess reverse last week, we were talking about maybe intuitive threads that have been trying to make themselves known to us that we might have been suppressing or ignoring or avoiding, fearful of, right? We talked about maybe not being tuned into our intuition at that time, and maybe what it might look like to realign that relationship for us. Something maybe being out of sorts there, something maybe we weren't seeing that was ready to reveal itself. Okay, so with this Seven of Swords reversed then, there's some sort of mental parallel to that. There is some sense of stepping out of inauthenticity. Yes, I said that right. Okay. See, I'm going to be authentic and leave that in here. So there's perhaps a recognition of where we've been false. There's perhaps a reflection on what false identities we are currently carrying. Perhaps there is a truth that we are willfully ignoring in the Seven of Swords. We are the ones kind of acting as though things are fine and there's something maybe beneath the surface that we don't want to look too closely at because it will be uncomfortable, or it will mean that we have to actually get clear on what within us even allowed us to arrive at that place or allowed that thing to be true, etc. So we might feel this week, makes sense for a Leo moon, that we are ready to stop playing certain games. We are ready to stop letting ourselves get away with certain things or avoid certain things. Let's see what else is here. Okay, so energy that is accumulating now. Okay, we're going to continue this theme of like stepping out of hopelessness. Ooh, okay. So upright, we've seen the star emerge from a journey of the tower being that energy that pulls things apart, that disrupts what is not real and what can no longer pretend to be real, what is no longer serving us or for us. The tower can be connected to Uranian energy. It tends to be affiliated with Mars, but there is certainly something about the tower that can feel Uranian in the surprise element, in the sort of seeming randomness of things, or in the kind of just blatant, blunt destruction of things that can no longer remain tangible or sustainable. Okay, so when we see the star emerge, we are stepping back into hope. We are feeling hope renewed. We are seeing ourselves stripped away of all things false in the tower. And we are pure once more. This is like pure core fire, right? So there's something about the hope that we're able to connect with because we've separated from what is false. And so perhaps the energy accumulating now is a recognition of where we've been hopeless, of where we've been perhaps still in that process of allowing falseness to burn away. Perhaps we've been recovering from a tower moment and we're not quite recovered just yet. Uranus was part of last week's new moon. Uranus is the energy that the sun is bringing into leading, ruling this Leo first quarter moon. So we might still be integrating all of that, but we might be getting a sense that hope is necessary, even if we are becoming very aware of where we don't have access to it right now. We will need it to get through what's coming up for us. Doubts and complications that arise with this energy. Where will I go next? I don't know where I'm leading myself. I don't know what my compass is trying to point me toward. I have no clue even of what this landscape is that I'm traversing right now. I just got dropped here. I've never been here before. The GPS isn't working. I don't have a signal, and I don't know where I'm supposed to be taking myself next. Okay. Certainly seeing connections back to the Seven of Swords. If we've been living by a false radar or a false compass, and we just got dropped here, we don't know where we need to go, and we can't listen to that false self anymore. Okay. Gifts that we can access through this energy, please. All of the majors are here. Okay. Super casual and fine. This is fine. Okay. So, gifts we can access. The Chariot reversed may not feel like a gift upright. Let's remember that the Chariot was the year that we collectively moved through together in 2023, aligning our emotional senses with our drive and our motivation. Perhaps there is something we are cycling back to that we're able to course correct now. When we left off and closed that Chariot year, we acknowledged that maybe we weren't 100% done aligning those things, but that we had at least initiated the work or the process to arrive at that place. So perhaps that is one form of the gift that we can see here, or that we can access through this energy, is that we are able to go back within now and
fulfill whatever was left over there from that work that was initiated last year. Maybe we're finally getting some closure on that. Okay. Maybe there's an invitation to tune inward and get clear once more about what our motivation is at this juncture, right? Where we left off with the Chariot year at the end of 2023, we had not been through any of the things we have now been through in the 5 months, almost 6 months, that we've been in this year. I cannot acknowledge that we are almost 6 months into this year. That is very stressful. So we have experienced a lot more at this point that maybe helps us fill in the blanks that were left over of, all right, so what is my motivation now? If I'm clearing away all these false motives, if I'm trying to gain a sense of hope now and get a sense of clarity about what this compass wants to lead me toward, perhaps I'm getting clear on the emotional component of that and the motivation point of that where I didn't have that clarity before. Lessons that we can make sense of as we approach this full moon. Oh, where are we done being guarded? What? The word mask popped into my head just now. We've talked about this upright for sure. We've certainly seen this, and we've talked about a need for boundaries, a need for self-preservation, a need to transcend the noise and to create a vessel or a container so that we can control what is getting into our atmosphere, what's informing us, right? This also comes back to that high priestess. Where do I need boundaries in order to purify the message that's coming through so that I know I can trust it? So reversed, I'm thinking we've seen a lot of reversed court cards in the past several weeks where we've been stepping out of playing roles. And this might be where we can soften. This might be where we can be less rigid. I love all of the, such an interesting kind of play of triangles and line work here. We've got the 2 triangles pointing this way. We've got them inverted here in these 2 cards. And then we have straight lines here. It's interesting symbolism to think about. Where are we protecting ourselves, right? Like here, the lines, the triangles are underneath the star. So they are sort of supporting a grounding of this energy and like rooting into this energy. Whereas the Emperor is pointing outward, seeing where we are driving ourselves forward, okay? And here we have kind of a play on that because the Chariot is driving us forward, and yet it is motivated from within and being rooted in our emotional self. And perhaps we could see the Queen of Swords wanting to be this open circle, wanting to be fully contained or fully cyclical, and yet needing to interrupt that perhaps with the implementation of a boundary. I can control where I'm going. I can control what comes in. Okay. And this kind of being just a prison. This was sort of designed to be like, where am I trapped, right? Where am I trapped in my own lie? So thinking about some of that, where have we maybe placed boundaries that are keeping us from knowing where to move forward? Where have we put boundaries perhaps on our consciousness or our crown space that need to be shifted into rooting and grounding? All right, where are we able to maybe reconsider what these boundaries look like now? Perhaps these boundaries were necessary from this place of falseness, sort of as an antidote to what was happening here. We needed to place all of these bars, right? And so if we're stepping out of this, what does that mean for us here? What's actually needed here? Okay. If you enjoyed this, please like this video. Please share it with someone who is looking for hope and trying to tune into where they are going next. And subscribe so that we can talk about that Sagittarius full moon and what sort of stories are culminating for us and what else we're stepping out of that is false. It's going to be such an interesting journey. I hope to see you there. Thanks so much for watching.